Hey, Wild Hearts! Welcome back to Alchemy with Sheeana Leigh. If you are still with me after last week's epic fire and heart to heart connection, then I know that you are in the right space for truly liberating yourself and dropping into deep embodiment. And today's episode, we are going to untangle why women stay stuck even when they know better. And this is the bridge. This is what I see all the time, right? Especially in my field of work. I get a lot of people who have done therapy, have done yoga, meditation, the spiritual aspects. They've done the deep excavation. They know their wounds, their patterns. They can list it all out beautifully, but they stay committed to their choice. And this all is formed around attachment. Now, I am a somatic attachment therapist, so I have done work all around this. And I want to say that most people get down into the first step of awareness or consciousness or unveiling and unlocking their inner world, and they process it or try and digest it and get stuck because awareness is not enough to push you through the threshold. And this is the reason why you haven't left yet. This is the reason why you are not changing and you are looping. And this is going to be a shameless space because Lord knows I have been there. I have done that. I still continue to do this. This is going to be a tapping into the self awareness and healing looping that I have been speaking about over the last year or a couple of months, but it feels like 5 years since the start of this year. And I want to really get you grounded in the why, like the somatic, deep inner imprints that are keeping you in these spaces and places that you consciously don't want to be in anymore. And I would like to do a little side note before we dive into this. If you feel called out, if you feel activated, if you feel reactive on speaking about this, feel the edges of that, feel the texture in that. Truth fucking hurts sometimes. When I'm called out on my shit and I see it and I feel it, it is icky. It's not nice. The art of alchemy is not a beautiful process. It is not an aesthetically pleasing vibe. It is authentic. And with authenticity becomes this beautiful excavation that is quite raw, and I love it. But again, I've said this multiple times, I am an existential kinker, and I enjoy the eroticism in the sensational ouch and the sensational ick. And yeah, I'm going to ask you to do that. If you haven't read Existential Kink, though, I would recommend that. That is a beautiful book on shadow work and also getting into like the kinky aspect of finding pleasure in pain. And it's something that I've just done my whole life, but this book really articulates it. So maybe a bit of homework if you're feeling called to dive into it. I'm going to try and keep this like so short and sweet after last week's purge and cry session. And I want to do it very logical. So you know your pattern, you can name your trauma, you understand your attachment styles, there's multiple, and you can understand your boundaries, and you've read books and you've done therapy and you've done all these things, and you still can't kind of walk away or dig yourself out of these spaces that you feel you are a no to anymore. And I want to say this quite intensely, that awareness without embodiment is just intellectual masturbation. And we are moving out of an intellectual masturbation session and into the world of body led wisdom. And I feel this is a huge transition we're seeing in this moment. I feel like even now, AI has only been out for a little bit and everyone's like so sick of it. Everyone's so sick of inauthenticity and fakeness and everything sounding the same. And it's intellectual posturing. And I feel like we're going flipping upside down at the moment. And it feels weird, right? It feels like we don't know how to move this way. And it is actually supposed to be messy. It is supposed to be a process that you have to dive into. It takes practice. All of this takes practice. I want to break it down into 4 pillars for you today. The first pillar I want to really drop in is your nervous system familiarity. Your nervous system familiarity is what your body prefers and what is familiar. Now, your body will choose familiar and over safety. Your body will choose dynamics that feel and reflect back to you your inner child dynamics, your family dynamics from when you were younger, and things that feel like home. But home is not always safe. And if you grew up in a chaotic household, you will understand that this moves you into a place as a woman of the fawn response. We actually move into people pleaser and fawn response more so than we will take fight or flight. And this is largely reinforced with intermittent reinforcement. Now, if you haven't done a bit of work and a bit of deep diving into intermittent reinforcement, you might want to, because this is a huge thing that I am seeing play out, especially when we start to talk about narcissism, toxic relationship dynamics. This is the reinforcement that really solidifies you to stay stuck in this wounding, in this trauma bonding. And I do not believe that we speak about this enough, and how this plays into our natural and beautiful giving nature and our natural way that we want to nurture and look after people. It is quite easy for us to move into overgiving. And when we start to overgive, we deplete ourselves immensely and erode the flexibility and the fluidity of our nervous system, right? It becomes quite rigid. And yeah, this is a deeply, deeply rooted work, doing nervous system work, understanding your pattern, knowing it, and then you actually have to rewire your entire nervous system. You actually have to sit down and get really comfortable in stretching and being fluid and moving in a new way, which does take time. Nervous system can be fast and erratic, but it is slow. And I believe that when we drop into nervous system work, we are largely repatterning and teaching our bodies that it's safe to move in a new way. And that is imperative on showing up in a new way. One of the other pillars I would love to talk about is identity attachment. So I see this so much. It's like, who am I if? Who am I if I leave? Who am I if I'm not a victim? Who am I if I'm not the perpetrator or the villain? Who am I if I choose this over that? Because it is largely embedded for us to be a good girl or the healer. And I've spoken about identity archetypes a little bit in a previous episode. But if you are always the strong one, the one that can go through anything, the one that sits beside them no matter what, a ride or die, a loyal one, if you are the one where you have so clung to this identity of who you are, then feeling that let go and truly letting that go and choosing a different identity or choosing a different archetypal embodiment can actually feel like death. It is actually quite an intense experience. And I talk about this a lot with doing like deeper shadow work and also deeper embodiment, where you relate in a new way and choosing a different archetype. Some people don't grasp how heavily we are identified to certain archetypes of us, and how choosing a different archetype, embodying a different archetype can largely help pull you out of the need to stay, the need to not walk away, the need to not have any boundaries, the ability to not speak up for yourself, the ability to go through everything, because that's what loyal people do. It is a huge one that I work with a lot of clients. Another pillar I'd love to bring into this space, we're going to wrap this all together too, but this is going to be quite a short snippet to the work about a lot of the work that I do. So another one is erotic imprinting. Now, your erotic imprinting, right? This one is really edgy because I see this a lot in my clients and I've experienced this myself. We can sometimes stay in dynamics or places because we feel that sensational activation, that actual, the nervous system activation, but also the erotic activation. The sex is really powerful, which you guessed it, if there is a attachment mismatch, most of the time the sex is really powerful because it is the one of the times where you actually come together and soothe that internal ache and yearning for intimacy and closeness. And that is really interesting because a lot of people will actually hang on to something because the sex is actually really powerful and they think that they won't do better and they will attach it to that person. Like their full bodied pleasure experience will be so activated and they will attach it to this one person, right? And that's really hard to unwind, especially with our eroticism and our sexuality. Trust me, I have been there. It is really hard to unwire and restructure this because when you're diving into the most insane pleasurable sex of your life, it's hard to walk away. It's really hard to walk away because it activates so many levels and layers of our soul, our eros, our pleasure, our feeling seen and held and understood. And yeah, yummy. I think I should do a full podcast on that one because that's a topic in and of itself. Sometimes the polarity is super addictive. And I've been in this dynamic before too, where I have been with somebody who's kind of really opposite in a lot of ways and really activates me in my way. So I've been with somebody who's been so deeply, powerfully like masculine and had these traits and made me like drop into this like soft, gooey, feminine space. And it was kind of like I got addicted to that aspect inside of me because it's a side and aspect of me that I hadn't explored before. So really it was like getting in touch with this slither of essence within me that was quite rare for me to tap into because I am quite an intense like woman. It was very addictive to, and I sometimes think that we fall in love with people to taste the deeper textures of ourselves and like what they pull out and bring out with us. It's like such a kinky little thing that we do because we actually fall in love with that part of ourselves and then we don't want to let that go. Sometimes the longing, like I said before, that longing and that ache that you feel can feel so intense, and we feel like that is love. We misconstrued intensity or chemistry per se with love. And I really want to highlight that chemistry does not equal compatibility. And I have had to learn this the hard way that chemistry sometimes hits all of these points: our nervous system wiring and attachment, our erotic blueprint, our identity attachment, and also our desire to feel our own longing and love through another. And compatibility is so much more than this. Again, a deeper topic and conversation for another day. Another thing I want to really highlight here is a lot of people, even though they say they're anxious and fall into this like insecure, anxious attachment style, a lot of people are actually highly still avoidant. A lot of people avoid their grief and avoid their sadness like the plague. But grief is the most powerful emotion and energy that can run through our body. And I believe that grief work is love work, and love work is grief work, because when you love so deeply, so intensely, so powerfully, you also grieve so intensely, so powerfully, so deeply. You cannot have one without the other. You cannot have love without grief. There will come a time in our day that we lose our loves, whether through separation, divorce. This is impermanence. Everything's always ever changing. And to know that you can tap into this deepest well of love within you is to know that you are opening yourself up to be obliterated by grief and pain. And so many people do not touch even the surface layer of their grief and their sadness, and they avoid it. And leaving patterns, identities, familiarity, I don't know why I can never say that word, familiarity. Leaving means, and letting go and releasing and moving on truly means you have to get to the depth of your mourning. You mourn a fantasy, you mourn a life, you mourn a future, you mourn what could have been, what wasn't. You mourn so much, and you mourn the version of people that you hope for, the version that you portrayed in your head. You mourn all the energy you gave, all the energy that you received. And I don't believe that we allow ourselves to get to the depths of our mourning and our grief. And so we will forever, because we're absolutely scared and terrified to, so we will cling and hold on to things that are not serving us and not right, because we're actually just terrified to drop deep into ourselves. And many women would rather stay dysregulated than grieve and to feel their true mourning, depth, and grief. And I feel like that is so sad, because I think grief is beautiful and powerful and creates art. And without grief and without love loss there, and without letting go and feeling the absolute combustion of your inner heart and your inner cells, I do not believe that we would have some of the greatest songs of our time. I believe we wouldn't have the greatest artworks of our time. I believe we wouldn't have so much power comes from our holy grief and mourning. So much energy comes from that and is birthed from that. People have created empires. People have gone to war for this. This is with alchemy, this energy is the way that we do create a new life. This is the way that we do transform into a new element, an era of us, and be reborn and let ourselves crumble to the ashes and transmute it. And I think that's really beautiful. I really want to sit with that for a moment. I've just shared, this has been a very short, brief episode, but I really want to sit into shifting this identity now and understanding that when you break patterns, that you don't, it's not a thought process. It's not about thinking differently. It's not about mental work, right? And this is what we see in the manifestation world. It's like we think it, and we've got to write it. And if I envision it in my brain and in my consciousness, then if I think differently and try and change, and yes, and I do believe that self-concept is huge with moving through and embodying a new way of being, letting go, walking away. But I truly believe that when you start to feel what you have been avoiding, that is when you break the pattern. When you start to, and I don't mean think about feeling it, I mean feeling it. I mean going there. I mean letting it riff through your entire body and let the sensational texture create something completely new. This is body-based methodology. This is body-based architecture. This is how you truly stop ruminating into, I know all this and I'm just going to stay in this victim. I'm just going to choose this because it's familiar. I'm going to choose this because it gives me the illusion of safety. And this is where we move into deeper somatic work. This is true embodiment. This is regulating your attachment within the body. And this is you claiming your erotic sovereignty and your pleasure and your sensuality for yourself. I'm going to let that land for a moment because I'm sure you're sitting there right now thinking about, right? All the ways that you know everything, but you keep enabling yourself to continue the cycle. And when are you going to stop the cycle and stop enabling yourself and move into a new way of being? And I tell you, it is deep work. Grief work is deep work. Love work is deep work. Anybody that tells you otherwise and is giving you this light and fluff element of embodiment or changing patterns or psychology or therapy, they have not dropped down into the cells of the being, and it is causing a rupture in how we move forward. This is why we say stay stuck. Now, I would love for you to sit with the fact of that might have cut a bit, that might have hurt a little bit. To hear these things, maybe you realize where you have been enabling yourself. Maybe you realize where you have continued to stay stuck and where you may have perhaps not let the hurt and the ache move through you and transform you. And today, that is going to end today's episode of Alchemy with Sheeana Leigh. If this resonated with you, if you feel like you want to move from this place of feeling stuck and incapable of moving, and if you are ready to stop repeating these cycles and move beyond it into a embodied new way of being, I have one-on-one mentor spaces open. Please reach out to me, connect with me, IG, email, whatever feels good. Share this with people who you feel are ready to bridge and move through with these pillars, these core pillars that perhaps keep this pattern in place and enables these little patterns to continue on. I want to share that I am in the trenches with you as much as I sit here and I teach. I am very authentic with what I go through, what I move through, what I struggle with. And these pillars absolutely were foundational for me to move through immense heartbreak, intensely abusive relationships, and really come home into my body in a way that feels so beautiful and good to me. And this is the work that I teach, and I really am so passionate about it and want to work with you, journey with you. I think more people need to do this work. I feel like this is the revolution we're calling in. This is the deep, playful field of reclaiming our joy and pleasure for ourselves, of ourselves. I'd love for you to share any comments, anything that landed, and rate this episode, subscribe. You know the drill. Follow along, buy me a coffee, get the pleasure ebook, and I will see you on the next episode of Alchemy. And remember to stay feral and free.